With 3 generations of experience dating back to 1960, the Mazzamuto family has designed, built, and managed tens of thousands of projects, earning a reputation as a top-rated contractor and placing in the top 5% of all licensed contractors in California. This show pulls back the curtain on construction, leadership, and life, so you can avoid costly mistakes, eliminate chaos, and build with confidence at home and in business. This is where craftsmanship meets mindset. And here are your hosts, Gino and Mario Mazzamuto.
Hey everybody, I'm your host, Gino Mazzamuto.
And I'm Mario Mazzamuto.
And today we got a special guest, Jackie Mendez from JLM Design. And so Jackie, just jump on in. Let's tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. I am originally from Napa. I own my own business, and I was just thinking about that today. I graduated in 2005 from college and basically went straight into design, and then worked for a builder for a lot of years, got tons of experience, and then opened up my own business 14 years ago. So
Wow.
I never really had any other job other than just being in design. So
And we were talking about, before we started recording, about the history, and you mentioned that your grandfather was actually an architect.
yeah, it was my great grandfather. He was an architect before it was something that was licensed. My dad has tons of his drawings, it was just sketched. It's not like computer like it is now. And then my dad is a contractor. Well, he's retired now, and he was also a building inspector in Napa. So I grew up on job sites when I was little. Then he became an inspector once I was like a teenager. So
So you got a long history.
yeah. Yeah.
So I think one of the things that I want to try to accomplish in this conversation is really dive into pretty much what we discussed before we even started recording, and probably what most of our conversations are day to day, is how do you communicate what you do to a homeowner?
It is interesting because I think a lot of homeowners think that they could possibly do my job. And really what an interior designer does is take those ideas and put it into some sort of form that is a visual that homeowners can look at and say, yes, I like that look. That's what I want. And contractors can look at and actually install. And I could hand it to this contractor, and they would go build it, and it would come out exactly the same. So that is the point of my job, is to be able to document that information so that it gets installed the way you want it to.
So you're not just picking out paint colors.
Right. No.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a lot more involved in that.
Well, and also I think you limit yourself sometimes when you just say you're a designer, because most designers do portion of that. And most people think about picking out paint colors, swatches, fabric, things like that. But you are actually a draft person too. So you draft ADU plans, additions, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I have been actually trying to have a different title because my degree is in interior design. A lot of times people get that confused with a decorator. And so an interior decorator does a lot of the furniture, pillows, accessories, that sort of thing. An interior designer does more of the hard finishes, which would be if you were doing a kitchen remodel or a bathroom remodel, picking out all of your countertops and tile and lighting. I am even a step further than that because I know how to draft. So it's more of what you would call a building designer, where I am looking at all of the components of the building. That's what does the exterior look like, the roof lines, and then also doing all of the mechanical and plumbing and electrical plans to get permits.
And that's really, I think, the important part, and what I want to discuss kind of with the topic of we just talking about, of why it's important to try to explain to a homeowner what they're getting for the cost, because without putting specific numbers on things, we can say, for example, if you're building an ADU for you're probably going to be around $10,000 to $15,000 in plans, right? I mean, that's probably a good average. But within that, you're doing you're doing everything that from developing the set of plans. So you're looking at the site layout, you're looking at setbacks, you're looking at city ordinance and codes and all those different things. Talking to the homeowner, seeing what they want, is it 2-bedroom, 1 bath, the size of the living room, how they're going to use the space, and then taking that and try to fitting in, because usually people are going to do these like ADUs in their backyard, right? So sometimes what they want to do has to be confined within the restrictions of the space. And that's just conceptualized, like just to get a rough game plan going of what you can do. Then you got to build it, as far as develop the architectural side of it, how the walls are framed, how different things are especially if it's 2 stories, how those stairs, all these room sizes, doorways, openings, all these different things.
Yeah.
And that's just the building side. Then you have to get in, and then you're dealing with engineers. You're dealing with Title 24. And then you still got to design it. So then you still need to help the customer pick out the cabinet colors, their countertops, their doorknobs, paint colors.
Yeah, I think it's nice, especially to have one person that you're working with. I mean, going back to design build and it all being under one, umbrella, having somebody that you're working with that is like that one person that is doing all of the plans for you, but also understanding how the material selections are going to work with that. And then I do all of the coordination with the structural engineer. And so, homeowners aren't having to reach out to the engineer and first try to find them, but also tell them what they want. I send them the set of plans and give them all the information that I know that they need to in order to give their pricing. But, coordinating if we need soil reports and with, sanitation and all the different departments that homeowners have no idea that they need to even, coordinate with. So.
And that's the bigger thing, everything that I just laid out, you could probably add another 10, 20, even 30 things that I forgot to mention, just because I've kind of laid out the big picture things. And this is what I've always found fascinating when we have conversations with people like you or anybody else. They can diverge into so many different paths because you start to realize these things are really more complex. And even for us that do it all the time, you start with one conversation, then you're all the way over here somewhere because it's like it takes all these different a lot
of detail.
Yeah. And so that's kind of the nutshell. But even with that, and you did a great way of explaining it, but even with that, sometimes homeowners still don't understand how complex. I mean, first of all, just going back, how many years did it take you to even be able to be to the point where you are now, where you can do what you do?
Let's see, 21 years. It's
21
been
years.
since I graduated with my first degree in interior design. Then I went back to school and got a second degree.
But that's 21 years when you graduated. So you already had school in front of that.
Right.
Then you had 21 years after you graduated with that knowledge to put it into real world, and then make all the mistakes that you most likely made, which everybody does because it's a learning curve, right?
Right.
Bump your way through.
And then to get to the point now. And so that's the thing, right? Is that people are paying for that. They're paying for that, those 21 plus years of knowledge, those 21 plus years of mistakes and corrections and just all those different things. And even when you know all of that, every jurisdiction is going to be different. Like we're doing one in Lafayette, and in Lafayette, you got to submit it to the city of Lafayette, and you got to submit it to the Contra Costa County,
or the building department.
Yeah. And then that's not even, and then you still got the sewer department that you have to deal with, right?
Yeah.
So it just becomes like, it's almost mind boggling sometimes when we talk about it, because we just do it so often that to us, it's like this compressed zip file and it just lives in the,
Right.
But then when you start unpacking it, it's like, man, there's all these different things that you have to consider.
Yeah, I was just meeting with another homeowner and was, kind of talking about things, and I could see their eyes basically glazing because I was giving too much
Too much
information that
yeah.
I understand that they weren't quite understanding, you know? So it's like, I also have to kind of like a doctor where it's like you say things and they're like, what are you even talking about?
Yeah.
And so I try to bring that back and be that middleman too between like an engineer or somebody, even contractors that are way more technical, and like break it down for them. Like, this is what they're actually saying. This is what it's going to look
Yeah.
like, and say it in a way that they can understand.
Here's what they just said in English.
Right. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I was thinking about when you were talking about the complexities, and you didn't even mention it, but part of what your job is actually obtaining permits, and that in itself, that could be a college
I mean,
course.
it's a whole industry.
It's like a
People
whole
pay
right.
permit runners to do
Right.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, because there's so many layers. So what I was going to ask you is like maybe just talk about real fast, like pulling permits. Like, I would say on a house versus an ADU, because with the house with the square footage, when the square footage increases, what, over 500 square feet, now you got to go to school district and fire department, and there's more layers of different. You're not just going to the city. Basically, is what I'm saying. So, like,
Yeah.
what does that look like if we're building a 1,200 square foot house or something like that?
Right. I mean, yeah, small addition, I think there's less, like you said, with the school district. Even like a kitchen remodel or bathroom remodel, that's pretty straightforward. It's almost over the counter in most cities. If you're doing something larger, an addition, a large renovation, or an ADU, you're submitting. That could take a couple months for review. And there's also multiple departments, and it just depends on the city too. Like here in Contra Costa, there's a whole separate sanitation. But in other cities, they actually have a lot of their departments within the same like building, and they kind of circulate that for you. So you just have to know where you're working and how many extra steps there are to go to those different departments.
There's
and
also an
submit the
additional
plans.
point that is only started happening within, I say, the last 5 years, which a lot of building municipalities, such as Benicia, Martinez, these smaller kind of jurisdictional building departments, are actually outsourcing their plan checkers. So you're not only having to deal with these multiple municipalities, but you're submitting them, and then they're taking them and sending them off to a third party,
Right.
getting comments back, giving them back to you. Then you have to correct those comments, give them back to the department. They send them off. And sometimes, I mean, I say this jokingly, but I'm half serious because I don't know it for sure. But it really feels to me like those plan checking companies, their business model must be off of charging you for plan check comments, because I've seen historically, like, they'll give you back 4 comments, correct them, another 4 comments. It's like, why don't you just give them to me all at one time?
Right.
You
And
know?
I think that they are changing things, at least with ADUs, that's illegal now. Like they can get in big trouble to give you a list that wasn't on that first round.
Yeah.
Versus I do have another project that was not an ADU and it was that. And it's like you submit and then they give more and you're like, how did this not make the first cut
Yeah.
so that we can just get it all done at once and we're not wasting time. So I do find that those outsourcing places, though, are actually a little bit easier possibly to work with because they give you the contact information directly for that person, even though it is an outside agency. And so I'll just email them and say, you know, can you review this set as a PDF instead of printing it out, taking it down there, waiting for them to route it. They'll review it and then they're like, yes, it's good. As you know, now submit it and it'll go through all the proper process, but it'll get stamped a lot faster. So
Yeah. No, it's definitely complex on that side, and that is just on the building side of what we're talking about. We haven't even really touched on, and you grazed it for a second when you're talking with the homeowner and how their eyes glazed over. Because not only do you have to do all this with the jurisdictional stuff and get it all through and push all the paperwork through, but you also have to guide the customer on you're walking into a customer who has probably laid in their bed night after night scrolling Pinterest, doing all this stuff. They have 1,000 ideas. Some of them are legitimate, some of them are not. But even with all that research that they have, quote unquote, done, they really don't have a direction. So you got to take all that kind of muddled idea, funnel it into something that's feasible, pull it out of their mind, so to speak, and put it into real life kind of mood boards or something, so they can see, and then also explain to them how the process works. And because you get it all the time. Hey, I paid for something, and what's the next process? And you could probably tell them 10 times, and sometimes they'll forget.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it, and we do try to take everything in like baby steps, because it can be very overwhelming if you hit somebody with, let's talk about your floor plan and all the finishes and everything that go into this. Like, it's just too much. They can't handle it. So we do take it in small steps, where we're going to talk about the floor plan, really nail that down. Then we'll start to get into some additional views of elevations or 3D. And then we start to apply materials. And so that's actually where ChatGPT is really good. Now you can take a 3D that is black and white. That's how I build everything 3-dimensional. So it is really nice for them to be able to see that. Black and white, throw it into ChatGPT and say, here's one mood board, here's another mood board. It'll give you the same exact image, but with the different materials. And then you present that to the client, and it's very easy for them to say, I like this one. Instead of just looking at little swatches and trying to visualize, well, what does that actually look like, in a big picture.
And again, to add another layer of complexity of that, so we're kind of building this cake of just layered complexity, right? With all the filling in between, which is all the little stuff that we haven't even talked about. But I think it's somewhat of almost the more important part, and what I think we have as an overall group and what we built together is that you're able to do that. And what we were discussing before we were shooting is how great it is that you come at it to the client from your perspective as a designer. We come at it from a building side, right? But so just, for clarity, if you were to come and work with us at Mazzamuto Construction, you would most likely be working with Jackie. And so Jackie is like the tip of the spear. She does all this stuff that we're talking about. But then at some point, that stuff has to be handed over to us, right? And what I love about your process is that you're not only the design, you're the architectural, but you have to get it, and to one of the points you made earlier, to the contractor, which would be us, but to the point where when we give it to our project manager or our installers, you've already laid out where that light fixture is going to go, where that height is at, how that tile schematic looks like, whether it's stacked or spaced, and everything like that. So it's really this robust package. And then you're working with the team of everybody: Mark, Christian, Nicole, Jill, Maria, whoever else is involved.
Marcos, Mike,
is Travis, all these people.
There's a couple of different names.
The emails are a little intense. How many CCs there are.
Right. But what's great about it is that it's kind of like this just consistent conveyor belt of a built-in process, right? Because even we have to get those plans from you so we can do our estimate, but then Jill most likely would have to step in, or Maria, or somebody that has to figure out the cabinet components, right? So you got the design, you got the architecture, you got the cabinets, you got the finishes, then you got the estimating part, and then we have Nicole who does like all the material procurement, so you got to price those things out. So these are the kind of things, I know when you and Mario go and speak to a customer, you're kind of trying to lay these things out in a digestible way to go, you're not only getting this, you're getting this and this and this and this and this, and then it becomes this big pile of stuff that you're getting, and then you're like, the customer's like,
Yeah. I think the biggest selling point to all of that design work, though, on the upfront, yes, it's a lot of work, and they do have to have that initial investment, but in the long run, that's where the whole thing about change orders comes into play, because they're going to end up paying that price regardless. But do you want to know what the cost of construction is up front, or do you want to know what half of it is upfront, and
Right.
then the other half trickles in along the
Yeah,
way.
as
I
a
would
s-
rather be prepared with the
Yeah.
total cost
Yeah, as a
upfront.
surprise, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, that is actually a really good point, because it actually was something that happened today when I walked in the office and Marcos was on a phone call, and he was trying, and the lady was saying, "Why does the design process take so long?" You know, and it's not really that long. I would say, on average 4 to 5 weeks,
Yeah,
around,
right.
there, right?
Unless there's engineering, it's a little bit
Right,
longer, but
right. But and going back to my previous point, when we're saying about plans being $10,000 to $15,000, typically if you're designing a kitchen, what would you say that comes in at?
it depends on how big it is, but I'd say roughly probably around 5,000. And
Okay.
then if there's any engineering, if a lot of times we are taking down a center wall, which is a load bearing wall, so that
Yeah.
would be in addition
Yeah.
to that.
But and that's really the crux of the question that you said before, is some people have a hard time going, well, $5,000 is a pretty big investment, and I don't even know what the kitchen cost yet. I don't know what all these different things. And we've had this conversation so many times with people, where they want to get that answer at the end of the road, but you can't do that, because anything beyond following that pathway of answering those questions is not going to get you an accurate answer.
Yeah.
But a normal kitchen remodel, you're probably looking at about $65,000, kind of a base for a kitchen, a good
For a
size
small
kitchen.
small kitchen.
And then you're still talking about cabinets and doing all that. So that's why most kitchen remodels, are somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000.
Correct.
So if you look at it in those terms, paying $5,000 up front to get all those questions answered is not that big of an investment.
Well, and think about it. Like, if you're going to spend $150,000, do you want to try to design and answer all those questions yourself? Like, that's a huge investment. I would never want to spend that kind of money, even for a bathroom remodel. If it's like 50,000, that's still a lot of money, that you invested in all of these materials, and then it's done, and you're like, oh, I don't actually like this, what I
Right.
picked, this green tile or the layout or whatever. It's like, do it right, invest a little bit in the design in the beginning, and then be happy with this huge investment, at the end. So
Yeah, because what people don't realize is like, oh, but I just have to pick out cabinets and floors and appliances. Oh, but then I have to pick out countertops, and what's the difference between quartz and quartzite? So let me go become an expert on that.
right.
And now I got to pick out backsplash tile. What's the difference between porcelain and ceramic versus marble, and the pros and cons of all of it?
Right.
Before you know it, you have to become an expert on all these things, and that's what they're paying you
even
for.
cabinet constructions. Like, do you want
what's the difference?
furniture,
Great.
particle board, or
Right.
do you want
Right.
plywood boxes?
Yeah, and do I want drawers or doors here, or with what, all the way down to, like, you don't think about how complex it is, but okay, cabinet pulls. Are you going to do a single pull or like a bar pull? And then if you are going to do it, which one are you going to do? And which color are you going to do? Which kind of metal are you going to do? You're going to do stainless, you're going to do chrome. Like, you start thinking about it, and like the questions become like 1,000 questions long.
It can
And
be paralyzing for a lot of
Yeah,
people. Like,
yeah.
they're like, I'll just live in this kitchen for the next 40 years
And
because
they-
I don't want to think about this and make that decision.
Right. And they think that they have to be the ones that do it. Right. And that's what your job is, to go, hey, like, show me a few, because I've seen you do this method, now hundreds of times, and you go, hey, do you have a Pinterest or something like that? Okay. Show me your inspirational photos. Oh, right away. I know your style now. Okay. So how about like this color with this finish and this thing? And they're like, oh my God, how did you know? Well, because I know you showed me your style, so I kind of know what you want now.
Right.
So you can lead them to something that maybe would have taken them 3 months to figure out, or 6 months, or a year to figure out, or never.
Right.
To like, you can get it done in a couple hours.
Right.
Well,
right.
and speaking of the emails, I see all the emails come across my desk, and it brings me to the one I was thinking about, where you were trying with a customer to figure out that stand-up tub, whether it should be on the back wall or angled.
Uh-huh.
And
Oh,
I don't remember how many times you guys went back and
Yeah,
forth.
Oh,
on
we
that.
still have a Zoom call coming after
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I'm not an angled fan, but at the end of the day, it's also not my bathroom.
Sure.
So I give as much advice as I can and really try to have them understand spatially how that works out. But if they're set on something, like they're the one that's spending the $50,000, $60,000.
But the point of it
Their
is
house,
that
yeah.
is that you're talking about the positioning of
Of a
one tub.
And I can take how,
Yeah, right. And that's the thing, is that you have to expand those questions across all those multiples about everything. Which way the door swings, where should the light switch be located, how many can lights, all those kind of things. Yeah, it's really, sometimes it almost gives me a headache when I start thinking about all that. And also, with when you're trying to, it's almost like I don't mean to be gruesome, but like when you're vomiting out all this information to customers, sometimes it gets me, like, because I'm trying to, like, how do I parse this out so they understand it? Because it makes, there's so much to go through, and I don't want to sit here for 2 hours, and I want them to be able to understand it. And then you kind of get, you go through all this kind of stuff, and then, you give them a price or whatever, and then they're still like, well, this other contractor said, or perfect example, you guys are on the job the other day, and we don't need to give out specifics, but the people wanted to do a big major remodel, and you were trying to explain to them why they needed to go through the design process, because we couldn't give them a price without the architectural plans, the engineering, and all that kind of stuff. And their response was what? They had already gotten 2 people that gave the pricing.
Yeah, they've already, so their response was that they were still looking for pricing from us, and we explained that they said we've already received 2 estimates, and basically my response was, no, they were not estimates, they were guesstimates.
I coined that, by the way.
Yeah,
guesstimates.
Yeah, you said it in an email the other day
Loyalty.
after watching your podcast.
Yeah. And so we had this conversation this morning with a different client, and about all of this stuff is that, we get this question all of the time. Why can't I get an estimate now? And what I do is I say, I'm happy to give you a ballpark price. I'm happy to give you a range. I'm happy to give you all of that. But how could I estimate something when we don't even know exactly what we're talking about? Oh, well, I want to build this. Okay, what kind of foundation are we doing? And it's not our choice necessarily. That's an engineer's choice. Engineer's not here doing your engineering plans.
Right.
So that's why it's a guesstimate, because you're guessing at what is going to be done. Like, we're not the city.
Did they tell the previous contractor the same information that they told you? That's what plans are for. It's like, this literally is the information, and everybody's bidding off of the same information.
I mean,
down to a T.
The biggest thing that I try to point out is, like, foundation, right? So if we were talking about wanting to do an ADU, okay, I can probably rough that out, based on a square foot price, new construction, whatever that is, and give you an estimate. Okay, $500,000 to build this ADU. Give you the thing, you sign it. Now we have to draw it up, all this kind of stuff. Come to find out, hey, you're sitting on clay over here, and now you're gonna have to drill 12-foot piers to put this thing. That just added $150,000 to your ADU cost.
Seriously, I had a project like that.
Yeah, and so, do you want to know that before you sign a contract, or after you sign a contract, right? And that's and so and I don't mean to come off callous, but it does get frustrating sometimes, because I'm trying to explain to you this process, and this is not just some arbitrary process that I'm just making up. This is a tried and true process to give you the best outcome that you can. But then they revert back to, well, this guy said that he can do it for X. You go, well, I don't understand. How am I going to argue against that? I mean,
Right.
what am I supposed to say? That guy doesn't know what he's talking about? 'Cause
Well,
that's
and
just-
at the end of the day, that number actually is your number once it's all said and done,
Mhm.
because he didn't actually estimate
Mhm.
it, and he got his foot in the door.
That's
And
right.
then once he got into it, then there's all these change orders and gets it right back up to the price that
course.
you guys gave them
Or-
when
or-
you actually go through the real process
or
of
it
doing an
exceeds it.
estimate. Right.
Yeah, or their price is higher than our price.
And
Well, it's just like what I told the folks today is that we just don't operate that way. We're not the type of people that are just going to put our foot in the door and we're going to knowingly lie to you, because that's what's being done. They're being deceived and they don't realize it, so they're being lied to. So we're not willing to stick our foot in the door, lie to you just so you sign the contract, and then we're going to tell you the rest of the truth later and give it to you in little drips.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, no, let's just be honest right now up front. Let's sign a design contract. You could take that design contract to any other contractor. We don't own it. Go ahead. You're just developing design. Give us something we can then estimate off of. Now you actually have a real set of plans. Great. Now we can estimate off it.
Right.
Go give it to a bunch of different contractors. You don't have to
Yeah.
just give it to us.
Right.
We'll all estimate the same exact thing like you said, because now it's every little tiny detail is worked out in this set of plans. And that's going to be accurate. And that's the right way
Yeah,
to
I
do
think
it.
in one of the emails they were asking for like an apples to apples, and I'm like, there's no way you could even have an apple to apple comparison at this point, because nothing's been developed.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, I think the frustration for me becomes, it's like, I'm saying these things to you to try to protect you from making the
Mhm.
mistake
Mhm.
that every horror story that you've ever heard, these are the exact reasons why this happens, right? Because what's the horror stories you hear? They gave me one price and it ballooned to this price.
Mhm.
They told me it was going to be done, and now it's a year later, still not done.
Or he left the job site
Yeah,
and
job site,
yeah,
right?
disappeared.
Yeah.
Exactly, right. And it
Calling them.
but
Can go
but I
over.
understand it because it's humanistic to like, well, this guy says it's $50,000, and you're saying it's $80,000. Well, that's $30,000 difference.
50's
Mhm.
better.
And I mean, we literally had this conversation the other day with a customer. He goes, but I really want to work with you guys, and so I'm just trying to understand the difference. But it's hard with your primal brain to go like, I just want to do the 50,000.
Right.
What
Seems like the same thing.
yeah,
Mhm.
So it's hard to get away from that, and I understand that. I mean, we're all people that make a living, and when we have to put out money like that, we're always going to be like, where can we save some money? you know?
Yeah. I actually had a project that I'm like good friends with both of the contractors that bid the project. One of them came in a lot higher, and the homeowners like had a heart attack when they saw the price. They ended up going with the guy that was slightly cheaper, but when they got into construction, the guy realized that the like framing bid was not accurate, and there was a $90,000 difference.
Wow.
And so he gave them the $90,000 change order. He didn't like eat that cost. And so at the end, it ended up being the like shocking price that the first contractor gave.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the second guy did it purposely to get
No.
his foot in the door. Like, I've done work with him, and I think that he is a pretty like honest, contractor. And, I don't know how he missed $90,000. That's a little crazy,
Yeah.
but it happens all the time.
No, it happens, and
Human error, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing is, unfortunately, that goes, if you had to put the issue somewhere, it's kind of the due diligence, I guess, doing that. But the problem is that if that person didn't budget for that $90,000,
Right.
then what are they going to do?
Right.
Right. And at that point, you probably
Your
got a
house
foundation
is already ripped
exactly,
off, or
right.
your roof's already ripped
Yeah,
off.
exactly. Right. And, and that's really why I love the process that we built all together, is that we're able to, because what we essentially have talked about is everything for the build, right? The pricing for the build. But one of the biggest things I've always heard historically is when people get the build price, they go, well, this is just for labor and materials? And you go, yeah. And they go, well, how much does the cabinets cost? How much does the flooring cost? How much does all that kind of cost? So over the years, we've developed the process of, once we get everything back from you, they meet with the cabinet designer. We put together the cabinet pricing, and then with Nicole putting together the material pricing, because you could have a bathroom where the finishes are $30,000,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're not understanding that, that could really, tank your whole budget.
Yeah, and I think going back to just like why it's important to have designer and contractor and homeowner all be, coming together at the same time and understanding what budget is, because designers, if there's a limitless budget, like of course we're going to want to design the most amazing things possible. But knowing what the budget is and having knowledge of construction too, then kind of design in a way that we know you'll be able to build it for whatever the homeowner is saying that their budget is.
Well, and the other thing is that you want to be able to approach it in that way. And you actually mentioned something that you had listened to one of the previous podcasts, where I said at the end of the day, you can present all the factual data, but you have to trust that person, because the data is going to tell you what the data tells you. And again, you're going to have to put that up against people giving you other information. Who do you trust at the end of the day that's telling you the truth? And that there's also the flip side to that, which is homeowners. It's imperative that they do that to us, with somebody that they trust, because you have to put all your cards on the table, so to speak. If you said to me, I want to build an ADU, and I tell you what your budget is, and you're like, I don't really want to tell you what my budget is.
You have to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then it's
well, how am I supposed to design not knowing what that budget is? Yeah. I mean, we had a homeowner this morning that told us their budget right off the bat, and I was like, glad to hear that, because one, I felt like it was a really healthy budget, but it does help us guide them. And do you do an addition, or do you put that money into doing a remodel and have like an amazing house, or do an addition and sacrifice some other areas? But if it's a secret, it's like, how am I supposed to help you make that decision to do the addition or to just remodel your house?
Yeah, you have to be open about it, because then what did we talk about? They were talking about maybe doing a master bathroom addition, and I let them know like right away, like, okay, well, the budget you told me, that addition is going to start at like $100,000, because you got to do all engineering, all of that, foundation, exterior walls, roof, the whole bit. Like that does not fit. Everything else we talked about fits within that budget, but now that you want to do maybe an addition, so like
you're gonna have to give up something else in order to make that
so
work.
But we wouldn't know that if they hadn't been upfront with that, right? And that's why it's like, hey, we just need to know, like, there's a lot of different roads we can take, but we need to know a number so we know which road to start heading down.
Right.
'Cause you don't want to get all the way down this one road just to find out that it's just above your budget.
Right. And it's not like your bid's going to come back at exactly what their number was,
Well, that's
we've
what
gotta
they're
guide
afraid of.
them.
They're afraid of that.
That we're
They're
gonna
going to
max
tell
it
you $200,000. You're going to go, okay.
$199.
Blah, 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 blah.
It costs $200,000. Imagine that.
Your lucky day.
Yeah. Who would have guessed?
Yeah. But, and that brings up another topic, which we talk about divergent conversations, is that you also have to talk about what the value of those things are too, right? So there's a concept called overbuilding, which means like if you're in a neighborhood that is primarily 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, and you want to add on 3 more bedrooms or whatever, you're probably going to be overbuilt for that neighborhood. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't do it. If you absolutely have to. If you have all these kids and you drive around in a Sprinter van because you have so many kids. But the point of it is that you're probably not going to get the return on the investment that you would expect, that you would think, just because you're expanding your footprint.
What do they call that? The point of diminishing returns.
Right.
So there's, you hit that plateau.
It's hard, I think, in where we live in the Bay Area to be like, construction is so expensive that it's like you get close to that just with doing an addition or a remodel, because the property just to buy it was so expensive to begin with. So I think for me, when working with homeowners, they're not looking to sell their property, in a year or 2 years. It's like they're investing a lot of money into it and they're going to live in it and enjoy it for a lot of years.
That's also a good conversation to have with homeowners. What is your long-term plan?
Yeah.
Are you going to live here, or are you going to stay here for because if you are, we should probably design it for, a market-based
exit.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
But I think the benefit that California, especially Bay Area, has amongst like Grass Valley or any place that's more remote and outside of California is you can pretty much, based on historical trends, know within a pretty good range that if you're going to spend $150,000 on a kitchen remodel, you're going to recapture that.
You're going to get it
fairly easy.
You're going to get
in a few years.
Yeah.
It's not going to take long.
Well, and not even in a few years. If you're talking about a house that was built in the 1980s and has never had a kitchen upgrade,
Right.
It's easy.
You're going to capture that right away.
Well, and in the customer yesterday, actually, and we have a lot of homeowners that say this, that they come to the conclusion, they go, I realize that I don't want to wait till I'm selling my house to remodel it to get the most out of this house.
Right. And then not enjoy it.
Never
it's
enjoy
like
it.
remodel it right before you sell.
Right before
What's
you
the
sell.
point
You're
of
like,
that?
oh, how beautiful this is.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've lived in it for a month.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's super duper true. I mean, we see that sort of thing all the time. And so it's like, and the point that I usually make about this is like, how much do you enjoy your IRA? How much do you enjoy your 401k? How much, it's dollars on a screen. And so it's like when people are worried to maybe dissolve or eat into, take a loan out or cash out some of their retirement for their kitchen, for instance, I'm like, yeah, but how much you really going to enjoy that? And you put it into this house, and then when you need that money, when you're going to retire, then you just do like a reverse mortgage. It's right here. Your money's here. But you've been enjoying it for 20 years, actually using that money for 20 years versus it sitting in an account. So, I think you're pretty safe to say that historically home prices will always go up.
Right.
Now, yes, are there nuances in the market dip? Yes, of course. I'm talking about historically over time. We all know that if you're a homeowner in the Bay Area and you've bought, more than 5 years ago, your house is worth more than what you bought it for.
Right.
Right there. So it's pretty easy to figure that one out.
So the pivoting question is, what things do you see as a designer that like come into contrast with what people, TikTok's a big thing, Instagram's a big thing, and whenever people see that, they see like the 12-foot ceilings with like the double kitchen and all this kind of stuff. How realistic do you think most people are with what is actually reasonable or financially reasonable versus what they are led to believe, giving the kind of glitzy and glamour of Pinterest and things like that?
Well, when I do the design, I always give them an inspo photo that goes along with what that design is. And I find a photo that is very similar to their ceiling height, the size of their room, possibly what the budget is, so that it's not misleading, because you can look at those. And even when they show them to me, those photos, I'm like, okay, but just so you understand, that room is twice the size of what we're talking about. Or, like you've got a little hall bathroom that you're looking at somebody's primary bathroom here. Like it's going to have more light and all of these things coming into it. We can have more options with finishes when you have a bigger space. So I try to keep things very realistic compared to photos so that they understand that their situation is different than what's in those photos.
Do you think it's a pro or a con that these things exist and that people have access to them?
I think it's good because visuals, I think, are just very important. But having somebody point out to you that your space is different than what you're looking at, is good. But I actually really like that they have photos when I look at their Pinterest, I can tell right away that they have so many similar things that they're pinning over and over and over again, whether it's like a certain wood tone or they really like, white or gray or purple or whatever, you'll just see it over and over in the photos, even though it comes from different homes. And so for me, it is very easy for me to see exactly what they like and then turn that into a design that's going to work for their space.
What are you?
No, I was you said the word purple. And so I was like, that's a good pivot, or at least a question of what are some of the crazy things you've seen people do without throwing a customer under the bus. And
I actually have a
disclosing too
client
much.
next week that we are doing a purple bathroom, but I'm
Nice.
actually pretty excited about it because most homeowners want to do the like white
Yeah,
down, the safe
yeah,
choice.
right.
Her whole house has tons of color. Her other bathrooms are like green. The room right off of this bathroom is purple, so it's going to be like perfect. I'm super excited about that. But I did have a client once that in Napa that the husband and wife were very different on their aesthetics, and that is always tricky. Like I
fun.
do feel like I am part like therapist, I'm in the middle trying to like make them both happy.
Don't fight, you two.
Right. And
Break it up.
his was a little, like off the hook of what he liked. And so to make him happy, she was like, you can have the garage.
He got the
I'll
garage.
take the entire house and pick everything. You pick whatever you want in the garage. And so he had a bathroom in there. I think it was just like a powder bath.
Yeah.
He literally wanted a flame toilet.
What is that?
It was like a toilet that
Like,
had flames on it.
Flames on it.
And so I'm like, where am
Like
I
a
going to
hot
get
rod?
this? Yes. I'm like, where am I going to get this flame toilet? And we
Custom
found one.
painted.
It was $20,000. Yeah. And
my
I mean, it didn't end
God.
up getting installed, but I felt bad for him because it was like the one space
Yeah.
you get, but we're not going to
Well,
put in the
let's go about what is an
$20,000.
20 grand on some toilet for your
Yeah.
That's actually something I would want to pick your brain on a little bit. You see these new like appliances like Miele, what's those like
Miele.
Mhm.
Or the other day I was watching TV and there was a commercial looked like it's just like abstract, looks like perfume. It's a lady on top of a hill and her black dress is blowing.
It's like for a stove.
It was a toilet.
Oh,
It was a black toilet. And so like what is I mean that $22,000, obviously that's an extreme toilet. But some of these things are getting actually quite expensive.
Mhm.
And it's not like you go in and it's like Kohler or American Standard or anything like that. Now you're getting these toilets that are like $5,000, $10,000.
Mhm.
What is it? Have you experienced anything like that?
I mean, Toto is like the typical toilet that we go with, and there is a big range. There's one that we've been doing over and over again, and I think it's a newer model, so it's coming in at a better price point for people, but it's got the like skirted design, so you don't see that like trap, and it's so easy to clean. So that's what people love, and Toto does that really well, where they've got that skirted design. But as far as all the flushing and all of that, it's like it doesn't matter from model to model. So that one I think is like $730, but like for a toilet, $730.
They used to be $50.
But now they're getting into the ones you got heated seats.
Right. You get the
ones that-
washlet.
the lids open for you
Yeah.
when you walk in.
That
the room.
starts at like
Play
$1,300,
some
and it
music.
goes up. Yeah, it goes up from there. So
Lights. You walk in the room, it lights up and it opens up for you.
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah.
R2D2
Yeah,
has
right.
private versions.
Has exhaust fans built into
Yeah.
it and everything
Yeah.
like that.
blow dryers.
The blow dryer.
So
Yeah.
we have the ability to throw some images up on the screen. So is there any ones that you would want to showcase, any jobs that you've done that you can give us?
You
some
can talk
photos?
about them and give us the photos, and they can get them on here for us.
I think one that comes to mind actually is my dad, who was a contractor. He had a property and he ended up selling it. And when he sold it, I mean, it was like a beautiful country property, but it literally was a dairy farm, and the house used to be the milking barn.
Wow.
So
Cool.
it was like all cinder block. It was like it wasn't an interesting building at all. And really to like remodel it was going to be insane because
Major
it was
pain.
all cinder
Cinder
block
block.
and it didn't have any rebar in it.
Mm.
So the people
Wow.
that bought it, he had told them about me. And so they ended up using me to do all of the design work. So it was really cool to still be part of that
Yeah.
process on that property, even though he didn't own it anymore. And so I would send him photos along the way of all of the construction and stuff and what it ended up turning out to be. But that was a really interesting project, and where I felt like it was great that they did end up using me because I do provide those 3D drawings. And they were talking with another architect, and a lot of them only do 2D. And so when you're looking at floor plans, it's hard for people to visualize what all of that means. And as we were working through the floor plans, we were going to have this hallway that goes down and then opens up into, you know, like this great room that had these beautiful views that like looked over Santa Rosa, like up in the hills. And as she's seen the 3D, she's like, I don't want to be walking down this cave that then all of a sudden, you know, opens up. And so we pivoted from a single story design to a 2-story so that we could have a much wider opening. And so it turned out great. I mean, in the end, once it was all built, but just having the ability to make that pivot and make that decision to go 2-story versus single story in the design phase, you know, versus like being construction and then have those hallways framed and you're like, wait a second, this isn't what I want.
A little late at that
No,
point.
that's
Yeah.
why the visuals are so crucial.
Huge, huge, huge.
To be able
Yeah.
to see that.
So
Yeah.
some of
That
those
sounds like a
photos.
cool
Some
project.
quick
Yeah.
kind of questions to get through, just so we can make sure that we've at least tried to answer them. What do you think an average permitting process time frame looks like? We'll use a couple examples for kitchen remodel. One.
Kitchen, well, a design takes about a month for a kitchen, and then permitting can be pretty quick. It could be possibly over the counter,
Okay.
maybe a week or something
What
like
about
that.
an ADU?
An ADU, the design for that is more like 2 months, probably minimum. I always tell clients for an ADU or even a house renovation or addition, you're looking at 2 months for design and then 2 months for permitting. And it depends. Like if it's in Oakland or Alameda County, it's going to be way longer than that. So,
I learned that this last year.
And what do you, because you've worked with us for a while now, and you see how our operations are, and you work with other contractors too. So what would you say as far as the amount of like logistical intertwining that, like, I feel like as a construction company, we're pretty good, right, with as far as the operations, but you also see other contractors who you probably work with that don't. What do you think that the things, when you don't have an operation like ours with the people that are in place, what ends up becoming problematic when you're trying to work with a contractor?
I think communication is always a big issue with homeowners, especially with the smaller construction team, because you have a lot of the guys that are actually on site doing the work. They don't have the, you know, the office hours to be doing a lot of the like letting clients know timeline wise, or, you know, your whole builder trend thing. Like, I think that's so great. They can see progress photos that's happening on site and schedule and all of that. You know, a lot of the smaller companies don't have that. So the client's kind of left in the dark on what schedule is unless they're texting the contractor. And then I think just like pricing too, you guys are ahead of the game on getting clients change orders if that is going to be a thing, instead of like at the end trying to reconcile all of the things that contractors gave along the way and then give them some sort of like big change order that can be pretty
And I think
shocking.
one of the things that I would imagine customers probably are surprised when working with you is that you do actually show up to the job site during construction process. You would actually, it's not like you just go, here's all this stuff, good luck with your limit, right? You actually are very hands-on.
Yeah, I mean, I try to be. I'm just a single person and there's only like 24 hours in the day, but I was just on a job site today, this morning, in rough construction, double checking measurements for the framing. We're going to get cabinetry ordered soon. So knowing exactly that they frame to plan. And if they didn't frame to plan, we just need to account for that, whether it's an inch off or whatever. I don't want to order the cabinets and then they come in too big. Making sure that the contractor knows, like, we have medicine cabinets going in here, like that's got to get framed out, plumbing, center of lights, all
I
those
think that's
things. So.
to that point is also a really big, because not when we are working together, like with our internal operational stuff, all this stuff that goes, all that information that you guys deal with, and then getting it to Mike and then ultimately to Travis, like those details, it doesn't really matter how great you do your job if those things aren't communicated properly to a construction team that can handle that information. And Mike is so diligent about like making sure that he has all those questions answered before you go, because to your point, you go in and you go, this wall's framed in sheetrock. Well, there's supposed to be a medicine cabinet there.
Yeah.
Well,
plumbing going right.
You had the specs. All you had to do was look at them, but sometimes it gets kind of crazy. And that's why, what we've identified in the industry is the kind of what you're saying, that you have construction companies that are kind of on the smaller end that try to do all this stuff, but they can't, because you can't be a chef and a sous chef and a waiter and maitre d' and all this kind of stuff. You're going to end up getting something wrong because it becomes too much.
Yeah, you're switching up orders at that point. The person who ordered the hamburger is getting the filet mignon at the hamburger price.
So you mentioned something before we got started. What was your daughter saying you should say?
Oh, it's just say,
come on,
hello, YouTube peeps, or something. I don't know. Hello, my YouTube peeps. Thanks for following along. What do you say? Hammer that subscribe button.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, however you say it at the end.
Yeah.
No, that's great.
That's the new trendy stuff these kids are doing nowadays.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my gosh. I try to like say the things that I think are like cool, and they just roll their eyes. They're like, "Don't ever say that again."
I like the way
that
these,
because you're the mom. Mom's not supposed to say that kind of stuff.
the way that the kids use the word low key now.
Oh my gosh.
It's just like they go, that is low key cool. They're like, what the heck? Nobody ever used that word like that before.
Yeah.
But to us, like, we're old and we're like, what? We're like,
I think of like
old.
Down low, like keep it on the down
that's
low.
what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
We have this argument with my kids, my teenage kids. Yeah, exactly
It's
right.
a very, it's almost like it happens when you're sleeping, because one day you're cool and hip and you know all the slang, and then the next day you wake up and you're like, what are you guys talking about? And what does that mean? And
I always say it way too late. It's like I catch on 6 months later and they're already off to something else, and they're like, what are you saying? I'm like, that was a thing.
That's embarrassing. It's so old.
I'm a boomer, apparently. That's what I get called all the time.
Same.
Such a boomer.
Same.
Like, I don't know.
I explain to my
grandpa.
kids. I explain to my kids. I'm like, dude, you don't even know what it's like to have like older parents. I go, like, my parents were like straight up listening to like oldies all day long. And like,
what do you listen to?
I do. I listen to oldies
in your
too.
backyard.
We're neighbors, so and we have backyard music all day long. And but like, I mean, we were raised around all the same kind of stuff. Like our parents, like our dad would be like, he would call like weed like dope. It's like, that's like dope is like a hardcore drug. It's not like weed, right? So I was like, we're not that old.
Yeah, he's like, are you doing dope?
Yeah.
You're like,
what?
No.
Heroin?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Well, I think we covered a lot today. I mean, even we could probably keep it going for hours, but this is probably why we need to get you back at some point in time. So, it's just realistically, we want to try to be able to answer the questions that you guys, how many jobs are you guys seeing a week now?
It's a couple.
Yeah, we're at one point in time, it felt like we were seeing like 6 or 8 a week, and then I was like, that's just too many. We gotta dwindle that down a little bit and schedule those out. But yeah, we're probably seeing like 4 jobs a week now,
Right.
something like that. But yeah, it's a lot of the same conversation, right? It's a lot of like, you know, they start just setting the expectations, letting them know that, you know, these people are throwing out guesstimates, that these numbers are getting aren't really estimates.
Right. And don't get your heart set on that number,
yeah,
you know, because it's
Yep.
not accurate, not at this point.
I mean, we like, it seems like every appointment is kind of the same thing. Oh, we just got this bid from this other guy. We wonder if we can get a bid from you. Oh, you got plans?
Right.
Where's this other guy at? I want to find him.
Yeah.
Who's this other guy?
Yeah.
Because he
and
keeps on causing us problems.
I try to tell homeowners too, like, coming from like, I am a daughter of a contractor, like, you guys are real people with families, you know, and you're running a business, like, to put a real price together, it takes a lot of time.
Oh,
it's a lot of time, a lot of effort. And so, you know, clients will be like, oh, I'm going to get a bunch of bids. And I'm like, well, at this point, unless you're really serious about working with somebody, they're only going to give you a ballpark number, because nobody wants to invest in putting a real bid together, the amount of time that takes, when you're just shopping around.
Yeah.
Like, it's not fair to them,
No.
you know, so be serious, like, meet with people, see if you like their personality. Do you like the way that they communicate? Do you feel like you trust them? And if you get good vibes about that person, then, like, pick 2 and get some pricing from them.
Also,
For sure.
recommendations are so big, you know. It's something that I don't think people really understand. Like, I don't think reviews have the weight of what they once did, because
Of all the bots and stuff.
bots and all that kind of stuff.
Reviews.
And we've heard it so many times. Well, they had really good reviews. Okay, you know, and then it just becomes a disaster story.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had the rep in from Colombia last week. She was telling us a story of how she had to sign an NDA, because she was working with a contractor and she had to sue him and everything like that.
This contractor she hired for her own house. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
But
she was like, they had great reviews, but it was like a disaster. And they settled, but she had to sign a non-disclosure with the settlement, basically.
Yeah. And, you know, but that's the other thing, is that in some cases you can't even speak about your bad experience because you signed an NDA. So she wasn't able to tell us who it was. Yeah, she had signed an
So
NDA.
people had good reviews, did a bad job,
And then
settled,
can't leave a bad
and
review
can't
now.
sing a bad review now. That's
Yeah.
right. And or even say anything bad to even people.
They have those
about it,
companies
right?
out there that clean those things up for you.
Yeah,
too, so.
yeah. Personal, you like, what are you gonna do? You can't change a personal referral, right?
Yeah.
You can't pay to have. You could pay to have a bad review removed.
Yeah.
You could pay to have somebody else go on there and write you a fake review, but you can't pay to change the experience for a homeowner that they've actually had work done by you.
Right.
That
Yeah.
you're not going to do.
No, referrals are huge. I mean,
number one
the
thing.
past like 14 years of my business has been referral only. Like, I
Yep.
don't invest in marketing or anything, and I'm very busy, and most of it comes from having good relationship with contractors. But I have lots of repeat clients, and then clients just telling their friends, you know, and or people that they know. And I think that goes a long way. Even if your pricing is a little bit higher, it's like, well, so and so trusted them, and you know, and it turned out great. So I'm not going to take a chance on this guy that I don't really know, and I'll go with the referral.
Sure.
All right, we're going to wrap it up, everybody. It is coming up on the weekend, so we're going to get
Time to go.
Friday night.
So I'm Gino Mazzamuto.
I'm Mario Mazzamuto.
Jackie Mendez.
Say your line.
Oh, hammer that.
what's the-
subscribe.
No, the one your daughters wants you to
Oh,
do.
I don't
Subscribe, you peeps, or
Yeah.
something like that. All right, hammer that subscribe button. We appreciate your time. We'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks,
Take care.
everybody.
know. Bye.
Yeah.